I was born of Wilfred Dale Comstock. He went by Bill Comstock, and June Violet Ruffer. And Dad was from Nebraska, and Mom's parents actually came from Prussia. And they came over, they spoke German, and neither one of my grandparents, they both passed away on my mom's side before I was born. Dad taught me how to work. He was an amazing dad. And they taught me to believe in God. I'm a convert to the church, but my dad was Baptist. My mother attended the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And they taught me the importance of a belief in God. Mom taught me, I think, what a mother should be, what a wife should be. She gave me an incredible example that enabled me to search out somebody who possessed those similar characteristics of caring for her kids, her husband, and that family really mattered. Those are the primary things they taught me. We had a wonderful family life. I don't remember Mom and Dad ever really arguing. I don't remember them raising their voice to each other. They were just really wonderful parents. Being a father has changed me. I think I had role models that being a father was pretty much what I expected. It was really a wonderful experience in so many ways. I anticipated bumps in the road periodically, which certainly occurred. We have 3 children that are all definitely different. Our daughter was just a tremendous, very girly girl. Our son was all over the place. He was just a wild and crazy boy in a good way, on top of the piano and just always extremely energetic. And then we had a third son, Brady. Brady lived 10 days. When he was born, he weighed 1 pound, 3 ounces. The smallest boy ever or child actually, in Cedar City to ever live for any period of time. But after 10 days, his lungs were so tissue thin that he just couldn't proceed in this life. Fortunately, we were able to bless him and give him a name. My parents attended. My parents never joined the church in this life, and they felt an extremely strong spirit as we gave him that blessing before he passed through the veil. I feel extremely blessed to have children who, for the most part, have made very good decisions and have one celestial child. And so I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I know that God has blessed me with good parents and a great model to follow. Well, right up front, I think every individual in our quorum is far more educated than I. I tease that on my street we've got doctors and all sorts of people, and I'm kind of the uneducated dork, on the street. But at 10, I started a paper route. By 14, I was working the summers on a farm, changing water. By 16, working on a farm away from home. I lived on my own at age 16 during the summer months out at the farm, and changed water, drove tractor, baled hay, all that kind of stuff. And then at 18, I started my first business. I've kind of been an entrepreneur. Really loved working for myself. So I decided I was working on the farm and then through a dairy after that, started my business called Tom's Cash Dairy. And my job was to, well, I decided my job was to go out and develop a milk route. And so I'd go out and had the bib overalls and the whole thing, and I'd walk up to people's door, and I decided I had to have an approach. So I'd go to the door and I'd knock on the door and I'd say, "Do you drink milk?" And I found that when people would say yes, they were right where I wanted them. And so from there, I would say, "I come through on these days, and if you'd like, I'll deliver this milk to your door." And I developed that route to the point where I was able to sell it and finance my mission that later occurred there. Subsequent to that, I served a mission in Indonesia, and then came home. I'll talk a little bit more about what happened after that. But I came home and worked as a security guard for a while. Found that that wasn't really going to provide for me the way I needed to, so I took a job as a salesman for a uniform and supply company. And we provided uniforms for like gas stations, sheets for hotels, all sorts of things that in as much as I love sales, I developed it to the point where if I took vacation, it would take two people to take my route. And so the boss really didn't like it when I'd take vacation. And it developed into the biggest route in the company. And then at that point, I was working 6 days a week and decided that I needed to do something different to be sure I had more time with my family. So I decided to take a test to see if I would qualify to maybe be an air traffic controller. A little bit change in that. I took the test. Somehow I was able to pass it and started a career in air traffic, went to Oklahoma City for some training. They initially assigned me to a Chicago center to handle the regional traffic, and then Seattle center, went to Spokane, and ultimately came down here and opted to just work in flight service here in Cedar City for a while before I resigned from the FAA after 9 years and started my own company. A little shift then, I kind of like to learn new things, and after a period of time, I get a little bit anxious and want to try something completely new. So at that point, I started an investment company, buying and selling mortgages, seller-financed mortgages. I took a class, a little 5-day seminar, and I was too dumb to fail, I guess, or something. I don't know what it was. And all of a sudden, it started really working out. And then I developed United Investments into Comstock Financial, which became my mainstay. We bought and sold mortgages. We lent money, and also started doing buying and selling. Developed rental properties. Did spec homes. Did a parade of homes 1 year, and renovations. And then decided to maybe try some new things. Had some people come to me 1 year and had this idea for an app that you could image headstones, and it would log the GPS location. So they were looking for some money to invest in that, and long story short, this company, I became the primary investor and the CEO of a company called Billion Graves. During my tenure, as I led that, we were able to image over 30 million headstones in 65 countries and 26 languages. We shared those with the church for genealogical purposes, and I felt really good about that. It was a very challenging time, as as we tried to grow that company. And then a few years ago, I sold that company. And then I had a young man approach me that worked for me doing some of my rental property maintenance. And he said, Tom, let's start another business. And I said, I don't know. I was going to kind of retire. And anyhow, long story short on that, we developed a company called Headstone Restoration where we cleaned and restored headstone statues. And I sold that last year. And so right now, my career is just maintaining my rentals and receivables for the money that I've lent in days gone by. And who knows what the future is going to hold. I just like new challenges, and that's just who I am. As I mentioned earlier, my mom was Seventh-day Adventist, and my dad was Baptist. So in our early years, we went to the Seventh-day Adventist church, and very positive experience. And I started growing older, then we went to the Baptist church. And then towards my teenage years, we went, my dad built a cabin on the lake, so we pretty much went to the church of water skiing and snow skiing, which I loved. It was a great church and enjoyed it completely. And then when, during those teenage years, I met Jolene, who's my wife, and at that point, I I wanted to date her, but her dad was the bishop of the church, of the LDS Church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and she was only 14 years old, and I was 16 going on 17. Very mature for her age, but anyhow, well, long story short, her dad said, Tom, you can see her at church and at my house. Well, this was after, I'll share this one experience with you about our interaction. As you maybe learned, I'm kind of independent. And one day, I decided to, when I was in high school, pick Jolene up from junior high, and we went to a neighboring city and just test drove cars. We took the day off from school. Probably not a good idea. But her dad found out. Now, her dad was quite a prominent farmer, wonderful man, learned to be a great friend. He didn't like me so much at the time. Anyhow, we came home and we thought everything was good. Well, come to find out, her mom and dad had found out that we'd skipped school. I don't know if the school called or what had happened. So when I got home, Jolene's dad came to our home with his attorney to our home. My mom and dad were there, and Jolene was there at my mom and dad's house, and they came in. And this was the most influential attorney in Ephrata, Washington. I mean, he was, the real deal. And so Nels Hansen was his name, and he looked at me and he says, now, Tom, we need you to know that if you continue to interact with Jolene, we will file charges for you contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Well, I was a minor. It was a bluff tactic, but it was a very influential tactic, And mom and dad said, we'd really, Tom, it's probably time that maybe you just took a break here, So at that point, D, my future father-in-law, looked over at me and kind of leaned forward a little bit. Now, D was a bishop, wonderful, loving father and everything. But he looked at me and he said, Tom, I want you to know, if this was a different day and age, and I was a different man, I would hire somebody to kill you. Well, I got the message. So Jolene and I took a break for a while, and then after about a year, we were back together and still Still, she wasn't 16 yet, though. So I would go to church with her. And one day, a returned missionary named Jay Bear was bearing his testimony. And I just felt a spirit that I couldn't deny. At that point, I said, this isn't just another book. This isn't just... I went to church because of Jolene, but then I realized there was something more to it. So I took the discussions. I joined the church at 18. At that time, my plans were to marry Jolene. I'd purchased a house at 18 and was getting set to marry her. And at that point, the bishop called me in, which was still her dad, and said, Tom, I think you ought to go on a mission. And long story short, through some prayer and some other things that happened, I said, yeah, it's the right thing to do. Now, her mom was praying, if he goes on a mission, send him as far away as he possibly can. Please send him as far away. So I got the call, Jakarta, Indonesia. We looked at the globe. The Wisers had a globe. I had no idea where Indonesia. We took Ephrata, Washington. We spun it clear to the other side. Sure enough, exactly halfway around the world. And so I don't know if Dee had some influence when he wrote the letter to submit my paperwork or not, but served a wonderful mission in Indonesia. 80% Muslim, 10% Hindu Buddhist, and 10% Christian. Fabulous experience, very warm. One of the greatest experiences was that a young man that I baptized in the early portions of my mission ended up being my last missionary companion for 2 weeks there. And so we served together. And then later his son went on a mission. And so it was a wonderful... Since then, I've just been very blessed in serving in many capacities within the church, and now serving in the temple and teaching the gospel doctrine class. In 2008, when things were not well in the world, I had a heart attack. And my sweet wife identified the symptoms and transported me to the hospital, even though it was close to midnight. We were in California watching our daughter, who was on bed rest with a high-risk pregnancy. And somehow, miraculously, there were 2 cardiologists on duty. And they were able to put a couple stents in and bring me back. And then subsequent to that, while I was in the hospital, while Jolene was sitting in the corner, I passed out, pretty much flatlined. The code blew. Things apparently went off, and they came in, and Jolene knows more about this because she was awake. I wasn't so much. And but I remember there was a bunch of people around, and there was a nurse that was saying, Tom, we need you back. We need you back. And I remember hearing that voice, and it was my name. It wasn't my new name. It was my name, my earthly name. And so somehow I came back. After that, I think my whole perspective on, I was a workaholic, on what's really important kind of changed. And then one other incident a few years later, because I don't think I got the whole message, was I was coming back from, I was with Billion Graves at the time, and the company was growing and had some tough decisions to make, and I was coming back. And as I was coming back and got to about Fillmore, and I was driving the car, and Jolene was just resting beside me with her seat back. And I started not feeling very well. So I said to Jolene, um, hey, would you drive? She said, oh, yeah. Let me put the seat up and put my shoes on. I tapped off the cruise control on going 80 miles an hour and promptly passed out. Now, there was a console in between us, so Jolene grabbed the wheel and did the best she could, but there was an on-ramp, so she started navigating towards the on-ramp. Once again, a lot of this is Jolene's story because I was passed out again. I have a tendency to do that. And so she started going, and it went all right for a while. Then the car started sliding. The back end hit a sign that said, in memory of James Slavin, who died here. We went in the ditch. Fortunately, we were upright. And as we went in the ditch, Jolene thought I'd had another heart attack, reached for her phone to call 911, and fortunately there was somebody right behind us. They came up to the car. The woman ran over. She was a nurse. The brother came running over, had to be a good guy. He was wearing a BYU hat. And, and the woman looks in and says, are you all right? And this sweet woman said to my wife, would you like my husband to give your husband a blessing? Right after that, a patrolman was just stopping to get a soft drink, saw us in the ditch, and pulled over and came running up. And the brother said, we're going to give him a blessing. State patrolman reaches in his pocket. What does he pull out? Consecrated oil. They laid the seat back. They put their hands on my head. Brother Thomas Wade Comstock having authority. We bless you that you might live to accomplish all that the Lord has in store for you. And life came back to my body. They transported me to the hospital, and literally $11,000 later in tests, they found nothing. We went home that night, minus the bumper on our car, Jolene drove, and they never could figure out whether it was dehydrated. They never could come up with a conclusive diagnosis of what happened. So I think for some reason, I'm preserved here in this life. I'm not expecting to get a lot more chances, but I'm going to try to utilize it to bear my testimony as many times as I can, because I feel that this is the most important message and treasure that I have. Same thing that I'm trying to learn now, and that's why people choose what they choose. I sometimes struggle with, I wish I could understand more why people are presented with similar choices in life and can take such diverse roads in their choices. So one of the things I wish I've learned earlier and continue to try to understand is people and why their minds and their choices are what they are. Still trying. So if any of you can help me, I'm ready. I want to be remembered as somebody who brought light to the room, that brought joy and made people smile, that somebody who put his family first, loved them, and the whole, back to my faith journey, the night that I heard the lesson about eternal marriage, I said, this is for me. This is the plan that is God's plan that I want to be part of. So, light, love, and bringing a smile to somebody's face. That's how I'd like to be remembered. More than you probably have time to hear. I am interested in everything. There's hardly a thing that I am not interested in, but I have some hobbies that I really enjoy. I've always loved cars. I'm restoring a car right now, a 1970 Dodge Super Bee that is in the process. I I love to, as flying, I have a racing simulator too, that I race against other people around the world in a simulator. And then I have a little go-kart track that out at my shop that I love for myself and grandkids and friends and family. I love to travel. Um, there's so many places that have so much to offer, not only from a landscape perspective, but from a culture perspective. I'd love to try to figure out why people do what they do. Astronomy. I kind of figure if you're going to be a god, you probably ought to know something about the heavens. So that kind of intrigues me a little bit there too. And just about anything you can think of. If I'd love to visit with people to understand what they do, so that I might gain a little bit of a greater understanding of how the world really goes around. I like, look at me, I like all food, but I like Chinese food, and um, yeah, there's hardly a food I don't like there. So, I have so many fond memories, but I love being home. Um, I loved Egypt. I traveled to Egypt and just was fascinated by the efforts people put into trying to memorialize somebody's life, and obviously some of my other actions. This life is it's more than just the dash between the birth date and the death date, and so um, I enjoy that. But home is where my heart is. One of my favorite books is called The Power of Moments, and it shares the importance of making a moment. I also like a book called The Same as Ever, and it presents some interesting principles about human natures that were the same throughout thousands of years. Our circumstances might change, but human nature is similar. Matthew 7:7. 7, of course, is from a theological perspective, means completion. And it in that scripture, ask and it shall be opened unto you. Seek and ye shall find. And finally, knock and it shall be opened unto you. I think if that principle is applied, it just takes you to a whole different level. You got to have faith that God loves you enough that even though sometimes it's not exactly what you want, it's what you need, and then just appreciate it and run with it. Oh, how lovely was the morning. Something about that. My wife is a tremendous pianist, and she plays that on our piano, and it's augmented with some other sounds like angels singing. And for some reason, when I hear that hymn, it reminds me of just the heavens being opened. Oh, how lovely was the morning.
I was instantly comfortable around him. It was like from the very first time that I talked to him, which was on the phone, I think, he was easy to talk to. And but not only that, I think that we were also comfortable being even quiet, not talking, which, sometimes that's awkward. But I felt like he was just an instantly comfortable person for me. And some of the things that I liked about him, he's creative and positive, and he's a lot of fun. And he's always been a really hard worker, and he plans for the future, and he's almost always happy, which is something that I need. It's been good to have him be that positive influence every day. So he by nature really wants to make people happy, and I've been listening in the other room while you were interviewing him, and he will seek people out to make them happy, to try to make them happy. And he strives to build people up, and he's genuine when if you get a compliment from Tom, he means it. It's not, he's not just, you know, being fluffy. He genuinely means what he says about people, and he wants people to be happy, and he wants to build them up. And something that you might not know about him is what a great husband he is. He's always taken really good care of me. He's my best friend, and he frequently brings me home flowers. Like, this happens probably every 3 or 4 weeks, and it's just random whenever whenever he thinks would be a good time. And he'll bring flowers home, and he'll put them all in the vase and get them all ready for me, or whatever. If he goes to a florist, brings them home. And he does that to let me know that he loves me and that he supports me. And he's done this for decades, many decades. He's also not afraid to vacuum or do dishes or throw a load of laundry in. And I mean, I guess what more could a girl ask for? He's been a great husband.
How do you live out your love of aviation now?
That is a great question. I have always loved aviation. Before I went on my mission, I soloed in a Piper Cherokee, and on my mission, I wanted to be an airline pilot. And so when I came home, my objective was to be an airline pilot, but I learned that that was going to take me away from home a lot, and I opted out of that. But now I have a flight simulator in my basement, and so and it enables me and allows me to go anywhere in the world. It's augmented with satellite imagery and the approaches and everything. So that's a wonderful opportunity. Is when if I want to travel to some place, I scope it out in an assortment of airplanes, whatever seems to fit my fancy there, and it allows me to maybe fine tune my skills and things of that nature. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Describe the Comstock catacombs.
The Comstock catacombs. Okay. I sense you're referring to the Comstock cave. Okay. Okay. The Comstock cave. You know, when I was a boy, I remember sitting in class just in grade school, drawing forts underground and things like that. And in our backyard, you'd go down about 6 inches and then you'd hit rock, kind of like on Mesa Hills, actually, in some ways, you know, the kind of rocky ground. So as I grew older and things changed, and we bought this lot behind us, there's some space that I thought, wouldn't it be neat if we had a cave in the backyard? You know, we were going to put playground equipment and things like that, and that was going to just be too much. Well, I don't know, too much, just be not what we wanted. So my sweet wife agreed to allow me to build a cave in the background. And if you haven't seen it, if you look in our backyard, there's a rock little quarry, and there's a door that says, you know, danger mine shaft. You open the mine shaft door, and you can't see the bottom, but it's a tube slide that takes you 8 feet underground. And then once you're underground, there's electroluminescent lights that look like gold in the walls. And you step on a rock, and the door opens into the inner sanctum, where in the inner sanctum there is a tree of life, Stella 5, and there's a assortment of things. It's here where I get an opportunity to share my testimony with other people about the importance of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I have, it took a year. I hired a man that built the animal caves at Hogle Zoo. I couldn't find anybody local to do it, but this good man came down, and for a year he worked on building this. And so I have people come. I've had people come from Idaho, Las Vegas, different places. I've had Marines, World War II Marines come, and I share with them. It's about an hour tour, and we talk about all sorts of things related to the gospel. This next week I have a youth group coming from Fiddler's Canyon, and we share the purpose of life and my experience. And so it's a great opportunity to share my testimony and how blessed I've been in my journey of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And there's a few surprises too. It's you start out and there's a few surprises that kind of might startle you, and then it transitions. The objective is to take you from a really spiritual moment to a really thought-provoking type of situation to just fun and memorable. And so that's, if you can take people through those emotions, I found that it's memorable. And I tell my kids all the time, the most important thing in life, the most important things in life aren't things at all. They're memories and relationships. Those are the most important things in life. So that's what I try to do, is I try to create memories.
I do remember the incident with the attorney. I do remember that. That wasn't very good. You know, my dad and Tom ended up being like father son. They were best of friends. Probably he was one of your best friends ever, I would say. And my dad was a very gentle and kind-hearted person. For him to say that to him at that time, I think he was a little unhinged. I think he was
just loved his daughter more,
yeah,
than you can imagine. And he grew to love me.
he did.
It took some work, but you were easy to love.
My mom would say that Tom's finest and most annoying quality was his persistence. And my dad wanted him to go away, and he couldn't get him to go away. And so I think for him to say what he did was so out of character that we laugh at him, you know, but we laugh at him now. We weren't laughing then. We weren't laughing then. I knew he would never do something like that, but for him to say it was completely out of character for him.